So this is the 2020 COMMENCAL Supreme DH. It's got RockShox, fork and shock, boxer, debonair. Haven't spent any time on a debonair boxer, to be honest. No time at all. And I've spent some time on the solo air, the old coil sprung as well, and they were all okay. But didn't know where to go with the configuration, so it was a brand new canvas for me on that fork, which is cool. Downhill bike, so 8 inches of travel at the front, 8 inches at the back, or 200 mil. Big dog. Haven't set up a downhill bike for years and years and years. In fact, I haven't set up a downhill bike since I've really established a methodology of setting up bikes. So this was a good challenge. This was a good, exciting one to tickle the curiosity. So we'll start at the fork. Spend a bit of time back and forth. Comes standard with 1 token in this bike, which I don't know whether they just set them up poorly, purposely, and just go, here, if you want to ride fast, you've got to know how to set them up, which is fair, whatever. But 1 is definitely no good. Straight away you can feel like it's just hollow, no good. 2, I tried 3 first. I went to 3, and 3 was good, but not quite what I was looking for. Went back to 2, and that was worse. It made it more hollow and had to run it too stiff off the top, punchy, and a little choppy. 4 was way better, but it was just a little soft, just a little bit soft, and it was really, really plush, and maybe just a little light on the pressure. So 120 psi, 4 tokens, rebound 11 out from slow, high speed compression 1 in from open, low speed compression 6 in from open. Could have gone a 7th click to add a bit of control up the front, but it was wicked. Even regardless of it being a little soft, which was costing me momentum. It wasn't costing me really anything else, just momentum and a touch of control at the front, just a touch of control. It just wasn't quite perfect. It wasn't perfect. So if you were watching the initial setup video, it was like 25-minute long video of just an insight of how I go about setting these things up. You can hear on the final run, the bike's still kind of clapping and choppy. You can hear it in the video. And then day 2, I decided at the end of day 1 what I was going to do, change config. I knew that I'd have to change the spring curve in this rear shock in order to get it out of the way of catching square edges. It was just catching square edges constantly. So I stewed over it, had a good think about it, and came to the conclusion that I wanted to, the first direction I'd be going was take a token out, take the lip off of the spring curve, flatten it out a little bit, and see what kind of curve the frame itself's got, which seems to be relatively progressive. High pivot doesn't really make much difference. So I don't know. I don't know if it makes much difference. But tuning bikes, they all have a performance ceiling similar. Some have a higher performance ceiling than others. It's just a matter of how you tune them. So some bikes will be different configurations to get to that same performance. It's not like, oh, that bike I ran 4 tokens, so this bike I'll run 4 tokens and that'll get me to the same performance. It's all completely different when you're talking about the back end. The front end, different story, but the back end is all relative to your suspension design, your bike design. So took a token out, and the first day climbing up the bottom of Horse Mills, which is just the path that you kind of roll out on, climbing up that, it's kind of pebbly and rocky, and not terrible, but first day it was real choppy, like catching every bump, slowing you down, and so that was a standout straight away. Like, yeah, there's definitely something going on there. It needs addressing in the back. When I'm setting up trail bikes, enduro bikes, that's the first thing I pay attention to is how it climbs, because how it climbs absolutely gives me a little telltale of how it's going to descend. And climbing's the most, most of the time is climbing on a trail bike anyway, so I've got to get that right. These things you don't climb on them, but it is a telltale sign of compliance. So day 2, took the token out, instantly killer. So 1 token in the back, 6 clicks of compression. You could go 7 clicks of compression for sure, get a little bit more control there. You'd probably go up to 8, 9 clicks of compression if you want to get real, like, real thuddy, sendy, controlled rear end. But 6 felt good. I could have done with another one on that second run, on that last run. So not the second run, it was the one run I did on the second day. It could have done with 1 more click of compression, but it was great. It was a very good improvement in confidence, compliance, and speed over day 1. But I lost a bit of speed with the softish fork. There was a little bit of momentum gone with the softish fork, but it still felt killer. It still felt really good with room for more either pressure or compression or a token, maybe a 5th token. So I could definitely go 5 tokens in that fork. 4 minimum, 3 don't bother, 2 don't bother, 1 don't bother. It's 4 to 6 I think in this fork. Ride height. So they got 19, 21, 23 mil. So 19 is minimum sag, 21's optimum sag, so they say, and 23 is maximum sag. Now I went through the lot. So at maximum sag, 23 mil, which is 30%, or just a hair under 30%, probably 29.5%. Too deep, scratching pedals everywhere, but corners like a god. Just corners like a god. It's so good, but you're just catching pedals everywhere. So no good, not acceptable. And at this configuration and 30% sag, you'd be clapping off the bottom, I think. Ever so slightly, but you'd be clapping. Minimum sag, too tall, so that's at 25%. Too tall in the back, so you can't really steer it. You can steer it, but you can't really steer it compared to how well it steers deeper in the sag. So you've got to kind of ride a little bit more cautiously. 21 mil of sag, going down into what they consider is optimal, which is about 27.5 mil. 27 to 27.5%. Killer, just killer. So that's 150 psi for my 75 kilo riding weight. 150 in this shot with 1 token, 3 clicks out from fully open or full fast, and 6 clicks of compression. I definitely should have gone a 7th click of compression just to clear my mind of how it would feel, but it doesn't matter. I know it would be better. I know it would be as good and better. With the 2 tokens, it just wasn't that good. It just wasn't that good. It was a little bit choppy, and whenever you'd be bang, bang, like it'd catch you, and you'd kind of, your weight would go forward if you hit a big square edge. So I'm not into that at all. And the small bump compliance wasn't there either. It was chattery across all the small bumps. So just taking that token out fixed it. Taking another token out would probably make it more butter smooth, but then you'd be sacrificing ride height. You'd have to bring it up so you're not clapping off the bottom, which you can't be. I don't think any taller in the sag than that 26 or 27%. If you were back down to 25 with no token, sure, it'd be butter smooth and it'd be fast as hell, but it wouldn't be great technically. You wouldn't be able to really scoot it around through turns and technical steep stuff. So, and you'd be a little over the front. So I think 26, 27% sag, 1 token, probably push these crowns up the stanchion a little bit more. So I've got about 25 mil or 20 mil of stanchion hanging out the top of these crowns, which should give me about 10 mil of room to go to push the crowns up the stanchion a bit. Now, there used to be there is a maximum seal to bottom crown distance that you could push these stanchions through. So you have that fine adjustment up the front. I can't find that info anywhere. So if anybody has that info or knows what it is for these Debonair, these 2020 Debonair boxes, let me know in the comments. But I think if I was to bring that up, it would set the rest of this bike up to feel at 27%, cornering how kind of similar to how it felt at 30%. It'll, instead of me going down in the back to get that cornering and sacrificing bottom out support, I can bring it back to that perfect that perfect suspension performance height, and then jack the front up a bit and have that same overall angle, which may well give me that same control of cornering out the back. So a little bit more fiddling I could do with it for sure. If I had it for a couple of weeks, I could keep going and go back and forth. But to be honest, it wouldn't take me long to have this thing set in real hot times and feeling supremely confident. So not a hard bike to set up, and they never are. These, whenever it comes with a Super Deluxe or a RockShox fork, they're never that hard to set up. Once you go through your configurations, you're good. But the most important thing with setting suspension up is getting your air spring configurations right first. Once they're right, then you can set everything else around it. Otherwise, quite often you'll find yourself tuning to a compromise, adding compression where you don't need it, or not running enough compression because you've got too much spring in a certain part of the stroke, or there's so many variables. But overall, this thing was hitting. This thing is a hitter. You can tell by those two videos. Way more quiet on the second day. The bike was just smooth, fast, and just out of turns. It just felt so good. It felt like I was on rails almost. Like I could, just as long as I had was controlling that front because it was a little soft. I could put this thing wherever I wanted. So jack up a pressure or a compression a touch on that fork, and I could just motor this thing around like it's a beast. It's like you with a couple of beers. Like a downhill bike versus an enduro bike would be like you're hanging out with some people and you're a little bit, you're sober, you're a little bit shy-ish, whatever. Not 100% sure whether to approach that. This is that's enduro bike coming into super gnarly, rowdy stuff. This is like 2 beers or 3 beers in going into the crowd like, oh yeah, I feel killer, like, oh, do this, like, yeah, let's get it. This is the big burly, I can plow it, I can get it done. I don't care how dangerous and sketchy that looks, I reckon I can get straight across that. Whereas the enduro bike would be more, I don't care how dangerous and sketchy that looks. If I'm on my game, I can get across that. So there's just a little bit of difference between a downhill bike and a well set up enduro bike, I think, in this context anyway. And it's killer. But going back to the enduro bikes, it's pretty impressive how hard you can send an enduro bike that you can climb back up a hill on, because you can't climb a hill on this thing. You can get some of the way, especially with the 7-speed DH. Top gear, you've already run out of gears. 34 tooth at the front, which is cool. These things are wicked. Would I buy a downhill bike? Nah, because I don't have anywhere to ride it, and I don't have a shuttle. I don't have a chairlift. I don't have any of that. So I would have no need, and I'm not racing, so I'd have no need for it. But if you are after a downhill bike, this thing is fat. This thing is very impressive. Maybe it might be a little bit big for you, Sammy. Maybe I should keep it. I don't know. Or maybe we should just chop the seat a little bit lower so you can get a bit more clearance. But for me, that seat's plenty low. The bike slays. The aluminium frame feels wicked, strong, fast, tuned well. It just munches everything up, stays across everything, and slingshots through things. So thanks, Sammy, for letting me ride it. Thanks, Andy, for letting me ride it. This thing is wicked, and I hope you enjoy the new tune. And 27.5s. You don't need 29ers. You do not need a 29. I don't care how big. Big, tall guys maybe, for sure. I don't know. But 27.5, it's the way. It is the way. Especially at the back. At the front, I can go either way. At the front. 29er is good. A little bit more inertia when you're slamming corners. Like if you're slamming into a G out that you have to corner through. 29er is like wrestling your big brother through a corner. Like you're having to really fight for it. And then the 27.5 up the front, getting it through a G out corner, is like wrestling your little brother. So it's way easier to deal with. not way easier, it's just a little easier to deal with. But then you get the benefits of a 29er in other situations. It holds a line a little stronger when things get a little wild, but out the back you get beat up more on the 29er. I don't like them out the back. But that's it. Wicked bike, wicked fun. If I had more time, I'd spend more time on it and just keep sending it. But it's not my bike, and you get bad karma if you abuse your privileges. So, over and out.